Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. And today we're going deep into some Warhammer 40K fan fiction.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, it's always a wild ride with fan fiction. You never know what you're gonna get.
You really don't. And especially with 40K.
Oh, especially with 40K.
Yeah.
So the novella we're looking at today is called WH40K 2.pdf. Very, very descriptive title.
Catchy.
Yeah, very catchy. And it takes place during the Horus Heresy, which is like, I mean, if you're a 40K fan, you know, the Horus Heresy.
Like the big one.
It's the big one, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the civil war that almost tore the Imperium apart. You've got Horus turning against the Emperor.
Brother against brother.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge mess, and this novella kind of throws in a new wrench into that whole conflict.
Okay, yeah. So it's not just a retelling of the war
No, no,
series.
no. It takes that backdrop and then introduces this whole new Astartes Legion, like a what-if scenario.
Oh, well, what if? Okay.
Yeah, like what if there was another Primarch and another Legion that we've never heard of before?
And how would they shake things up?
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's what we're going to be exploring today, so...
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So, to set the stage, the story starts with Conrad Kurz.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Wow.
Conrad Kurz, Primarch of the Night Lords.
Not exactly known for his sunny disposition.
No, no, not at all. I mean, he's notorious for brutality, for terror tactics.
It's like Batman, but a lot more murdery.
Yeah, basically Batman gone bad, leading an army of super soldiers, you know?
Yeah, the Night Lords, they're pretty terrifying.
Oh, yeah, and Kurz himself is just... I mean, he's a really complex character, but definitely not someone you want to run into in a dark alley.
Or a well-lit alley.
Or any alley, really.
Probably best to avoid alleys altogether if Kurz is around.
Right, exactly. So, anyway, Kurz is on his way back to Terra after some, let's say, unpleasantness on his homeworld.
Right, so he's already in a bad mood.
Oh, yeah. He's not having a good day. Let's
Yeah.
just put it that way. And during this journey back to Terra, he comes across something very, very strange.
What's that?
An ancient relic container just drifting in space.
Okay, so in 40K, finding any relic from the past is a big deal, right?
Oh, yeah, especially during the Horus Heresy when everyone's scrambling for any advantage they can get.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Exactly. But what Kurz finds inside this container is, well, it's game-changing.
Okay, I gotta ask, what's in the container?
Oh, yeah, we're getting to the good stuff. Hold on. Before we get into that, though, I think it might be helpful to explain what Astartes and Primarchs are.
Oh yeah, a good point. Not everyone listening might be familiar with 40K lore.
Right. So basically, Astartes are these genetically engineered super soldiers, like the elite of the elite.
They're like the Space Marines of the future.
Yeah, exactly. They're big, they're strong, they're tough, they're basically walking tanks.
And each Legion of Astartes is led by a Primarch.
Right. Each Primarch was created by the Emperor himself using some crazy advanced technology.
Like super science stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about demigods leading armies of super soldiers. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's 40K for you.
Exactly. So, back to Kurz and his mysterious container. What he finds inside are vials of blood.
Vials of blood. Okay, that's a little creepy.
Yeah, it's a little creepy, but it's also hugely important because this blood belongs to two figures from the Age of Progress.
Age of Progress now, that's a term we haven't heard in a while.
Right, so before the Imperium, before all the darkness and war, there was this time when humanity was reaching for the stars, you know, exploration, innovation, all that good stuff.
So like a golden age.
Yeah, kind of like a golden age. And these two figures, Donaldus Triumphus and Iliamus Moscus, they were like icons of that era.
Okay, I'm guessing Triumphus was like a political leader or something.
You got it. He was a charismatic leader who unified Terra under his rule.
And Moscus.
He was a technological genius, like pushing the boundaries of science and industry.
So basically you've got the brains and the brawn.
Yeah, exactly. And their blood, their genetic material, it's like a window into a lost era of human potential.
And Kurz just stumbles upon this.
Yeah, talk about luck, right? Or maybe it's fate, who knows? But it gets even better because the container also has a hard drive.
A hard drive.
Yeah, filled with knowledge from the Age of Progress. Like, imagine all the lost technology, all the scientific advancements just sitting there waiting to be rediscovered.
That's huge, like a technological treasure trove.
Oh, yeah, and you can imagine how valuable this would be to the Imperium, even with all their advanced technology.
Right, they're always looking for ways to improve their weapons, their armor, their everything.
Exactly. So, Kurz finding this stuff, it's a big deal, but here's the thing.
What?
Kurz, the guy known for brutality and terror, he finds these relics that represent a more peaceful and unified era of humanity.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the universe has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And Kurz, he's not stupid. He sees the irony.
So what does he do?
He decides to use these relics as leverage against the Emperor.
Oh boy, this is going to be good.
Yeah, he presents them to the emperor not as a gift but as a challenge. Like, look what your glorious imperium has forgotten.
Throwing down the gauntlet.
Oh, yeah, big time. And the emperor, well, let's just say he's not too happy about it.
I can imagine.
But he's also intrigued because he sees the potential in these relics, especially the genetic material.
He's probably thinking New Astartes Legion.
Bingo! He wants to create a new legion using the genes of Triumphus and Moscus, a legion that could turn the tide of the Horus heresy.
Now that's a wild twist.
Right. I mean, all the Primarchs and their legions were supposed to be accounted for.
This is like rewriting history.
Yeah, it's like the author took the established lore and said, hold my beer.
I love it. So how does the Emperor plan to make this happen?
Well, he calls in the big guns the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Oh yeah, the tech priests, they're the only ones who could even attempt something like this.
Exactly. They're like this blend of scientists and religious fanatics obsessed with technology.
They see machines as holy.
Yeah, and the emperor tasks them with studying the relics, figuring out how to harness the genetic material of these ancient figures.
I bet they were thrilled.
Oh, yeah. I mean, imagine being a tech priest and being handed this ancient hard drive filled with lost knowledge.
It's like Christmas and their birthday all rolled into one.
Exactly. But here's the thing about the Mechanicus. They're not exactly known for playing by the rules.
Right, they have their own agendas.
Oh, yeah, big time. And Kelberhal, the fabricator general of Mars, he's the leader of the Mechanicus, and he's ambitious, to say the least.
He's probably already thinking about how to use this new technology to benefit the Mechanicus.
Oh, absolutely. He sees this as an opportunity to increase their power and influence within the Imperium.
So we've got Kurz, who found the relics and wants to cause chaos.
We've got the Emperor, who wants to use them to win the war.
And we've got Kelberhal, who's playing his own game.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster, but also for a really, really good story.
So what happens next?
Well, that's the story for part 2 of our deep dive.
Oh, come on. You can't leave us hanging like that.
You'll have to wait and see.
Fine, but I'm already hooked.
I told you this was going to be good.
You weren't kidding.
All right, we'll be back after a short break to continue our deep dive into WH40K2.pdf.
Okay, so we've got this new Astartes Legion being cooked up from the genes of these ancient figures. But how do they even start doing that? I mean, it seems like even for the Mechanicus, this is a long shot.
Oh, it's a huge undertaking, for sure. But they approach it with, their usual blend of science and religious ritual.
Right, because it's the Mechanicus we're talking about.
Exactly. So they start by trying to create a prototype. Astartes using just Donaldus Triumphus's genetic material.
Okay, so just the Triumphus genes to start with, and what do they call this prototype?
Subject Primus.
Subject Primus. That sounds kind of ominous. Like, what was he like?
He was impressive, like, even for an Astartes.
Okay, so we're talking about a super soldier on top of a super soldier.
Yeah, I mean, imagine an Astartes already a beast, right? But then amped up even further by the unique qualities of Triumphus's genes.
So like strength, speed, all that jazz.
Oh, yeah, all of it cranked up to 11. They said he was strong enough to go toe-to-toe with the Custodes. Whoa, hold on, Custodes. We got to explain that one for the folks who might not be as familiar with 40K.
Right, the Custodes are the Emperor's personal bodyguard, like the best of the best, even among the Astartes.
So they're like the Astartes of the
Wow.
Astartes.
Pretty much so. For Subject Primus to even hold his own against a Custodes, it's a testament to his power.
That's insane. But you said there were challenges in creating these new Astartes. What kind of problems did they run into?
Well, the Alemus Moscus genetic material, that was a tough nut to crack.
Really? How so?
His DNA, it's brilliant, but also incredibly complex, and it introduced some instability into the gene seed.
Instability, so like unpredictable side effects.
Yeah, kind of like trying to mix two really powerful but volatile chemicals. You might get an amazing reaction, but you might also get an explosion.
So basically, they're creating this new Astartes Legion with these super powerful but potentially unstable genes right in the middle of a galactic civil war and surrounded by people with their own agendas.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster, but that's 40K for you.
Nothing's ever easy. So what happens? Does the Emperor just scrap the project?
No, he's impressed enough with Subject Primus that he authorizes the creation of a full Astartes Legion.
Whoa, so they go all in?
They go all in. They name the legion the Donaldus Triumphus after their genetic forefather.
Makes sense, but are they all just carbon copies of Subject Primus, or is there some variety within the Legion?
This is where it gets really interesting. The Donaldus Triumphus, they're actually divided into two distinct companies.
Two companies? Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
One company is the Americanus Apparatus. They're often called the Sons of Magiae, and they embody that strength and aggression of Donaldus Triumphus.
So they're like the heavy hitters.
Yeah, basically. And then you have the Guardians of Melania. Sometimes they're called the Prodigal Sons. and they're more focused on protection and a more spiritual approach to warfare.
Spiritual Astartes, that's not something you see every day in 40K.
It's definitely unique, but it makes sense when you consider the two figures they were created from: Triumphus, the bold leader, and Moschus, the brilliant innovator. It's like two sides of the same coin.
So you've got these two very different companies within the same legion. How does that work out? Do they clash?
Well, that's one of the big questions, right? Can these two seemingly contradictory approaches to warfare actually function together? Can they be an effective fighting force, especially considering what they're about to be thrown into,
Which
the
is?
Horus Heresy?
Of course, the Emperor doesn't waste any time putting them to the test.
Nope. He deploys the Donaldus Triumphus to the Estvan system.
Istvan, now that rings a bell. Didn't some pretty bad stuff go down there during the Horus Heresy?
Oh, yeah. Istvan, it's a turning point in the war.
Yeah.
A brutal, bloody conflict that pits brother against brother, legion against legion.
So they're sending this brand new, untested legion into one of the most horrific battles of the heresy.
It's a huge gamble.
Yeah.
But the Emperor's desperate. He needs every Astartes he can get, even if they're fresh out of the gene vats.
Talk about trial by fire, but why Istvan specifically? What's the strategic thinking there?
I think there's a symbolic element to it, too, sending the Donaldus Triumphus to Istvan. It's a message to Horus and the traitors.
What kind of message?
It's like he's saying, even in the face of rebellion, the Imperium is still capable of creating new weapons, new legions. He's not backing down.
So it's a power play, a way to show Horus that he's still got some tricks up his sleeve.
Exactly. But what about the legion themselves? How do they react to being sent to Istvan?
Yeah, are they terrified? Are they excited? Are they just confused?
From what we see in the novella, they're eager to prove themselves. They were created for this, trained for war, especially James I.
James the First, remind me who that is again.
He's the first fully realized Astartes of the Donaldus Triumphus Legion. He's a fascinating character, intensely loyal, incredibly skilled.
So he's like the poster boy for this new legion.
Yeah, pretty much. He embodies the ideals of the Americanus apparatus, the sons of Magi, believing in overwhelming force and decisive victory.
So he's all about shock and awe, taking the fight to the enemy, no messing around.
Exactly. He sees this deployment as their chance to make a real difference, to crush the traitors and prove themselves worthy of their Primarch's legacy.
Okay, but what about the Guardians of Melania? They're not exactly known for their love of overwhelming force.
Right. They're the ones who are more focused on protection and preservation, a more compassionate approach to warfare.
It's interesting to see how these two companies created from the same gene seed prepare for the horrors of Istvan V in such different ways.
It really speaks to the duality of their genetic legacy.
It does, and it makes their impending deployment even more compelling. Will they clash over their differing approaches? Will one company prove more effective than the other? Or will they find a way to balance their strengths and weaknesses and work together?
So many questions, and we haven't even touched on what's happening with Jude back on Mars.
Oh, yeah, Jude, the psychic kid who's potentially talking to some mysterious entity across the galaxy. This is getting intense. Okay, so last we left off, this new Astartes Legion, the Donaldus Triumphus, was about to get their first taste of battle at Istvan V, and Jude was back on Mars with his psychic powers going haywire and sending messages to this mysterious harbinger. So much going on. Where do we even begin?
Well, I think we got to start with the Donaldus Triumphus. They arrive at Istvan V, ready for a fight, eager to prove their loyalty to the Emperor.
I bet those sons of Magi were itching for some action.
Oh, absolutely. They're all about that shock and awe, overwhelming force, just like their namesake, Donaldus Triumphus.
I can just picture them all decked out in their power armor with those big ol' eagle emblems.
Yeah, the novella describes their armor in detail. It's pretty awesome. Lots of eagle iconography. And their weapons are top of the line, the best the Mechanicum can offer.
And leading the charge is James the First, right?
Yep, James I, he's like the embodiment of the Americanus apparatus.
Right.
He's this charismatic, confident warrior, totally convinced that they're going to win, that they'll crush the traitors and prove themselves worthy of their Primarch's legacy.
Okay, but what about the other company, the Guardians of Melania? They're not exactly known for their aggressive tactics.
Yeah, they're a different breed altogether. They're still loyal to the Emperor, of course, but their focus is more on protection, on shielding the innocent from the horrors of war.
So they're like the shield to the sons of Magi's sword.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They represent a more cautious approach to warfare, a recognition of the cost of conflict.
It's really interesting to see how these two companies, both born from the same gene seed, approach warfare so differently.
It really highlights the whole nature versus nurture debate, even in the context of genetically engineered super soldiers.
Right. You can give them the same genes, But their upbringing, their training, it all shapes who they become.
Exactly, and it makes their deployment to Ispan V all the more fascinating. Will these two different approaches clash, or will they complement each other?
Will one prove more effective than the other in the chaos of battle?
We've got the grand spectacle of war unfolding, with the Donald Triumphus facing their first real test.
And then we have this more psychological drama happening with Jude and his psychic powers back on Mars. It's like two sides of the same coin.
And the novella does a fantastic job of weaving those two storylines together, building tension and suspense.
Okay, but before we get to the climax of all this, we gotta talk about Kelberhel. He's been lurking in the background this whole time. What's he up to?
Well, he's not just sitting around twiddling his thumbs. He's become obsessed with Jude's power.
I can imagine he sees Jude as like the ultimate weapon.
Exactly. He wants to control Jude to use him to further the Mechanicum's agenda.
But isn't that kind of risky? I mean, wouldn't that put him at odds with the Emperor?
Oh, absolutely. Kelberhal's playing a dangerous game. His loyalty is to the Mechanicum first and foremost.
He's walking a tightrope.
He is. And it's only a matter of time before he slips.
Okay, so we've got the Donaldus Triumphus marching towards a battle. They know nothing about Jude's powers, spiraling out of control, and Kelberhal scheming in the shadows what could possibly go wrong.
Well, as you might expect, things go very, very wrong. The Donaldus Triumphus arrives at Isfahan V, ready to fight for the Emperor, but they have no idea they're walking into a trap.
A trap? What kind of trap?
It's a massacre orchestrated by Horus and the traitor legions. They lured the loyalist legions to Isfanvath under false pretenses and then unleashed everything they had.
So this brand new legion, barely a year old, is thrown into one of the most brutal battles of the Horus heresy.
Yeah.
Talk about a baptism by fire.
Yeah, it's a real trial by fire for the Donaldus Triumphus. They're facing unimaginable horrors fighting against their own brothers, witnessing the full brutality of war.
And how do they hold up?
They fight bravely, showing the skills and tactics that the Mechanicum drilled into them.
I bet the sons of Magier were in their element.
Oh yeah, they were carving a bloody path through the enemy ranks, but they were taking heavy losses too.
And the Guardians of Melania.
They proved their worth too. Their focus on protecting their allies and minimizing civilian casualties was invaluable in the chaos.
So even in the midst of this horrific battle, the two companies managed to work together.
Yeah, they found a way to balance their strengths and weaknesses to fight as one.
That's actually kind of heartwarming in a grimdark 40K sort of way.
Right, it shows that even in the darkest of times, there's still room for unity, for cooperation.
But what about Jude? What's happening with him while all this is going down?
His story takes a dark turn. His powers are growing stronger. He's manifesting abilities that scare even the most experienced psychers in the Mechanicum.
And Kelberhal's trying to control him, right?
He's trying, but Jude's powers are too wild, too unpredictable. And then, during one of his slackwalking episodes, Jude says something that chills everyone to the bone. He says, "I am the harbinger of peace."
The Harbinger of Peace. But wait, wasn't the Harbinger the one sending those messages through Jude? What does it mean, is Jude becoming the very thing that's been influencing him?
That's the big question the novella leaves us hanging on that note.
So no happy ending.
Not exactly. We see the Donaldus Triumphus, battered but unbroken, retreating from the carnage of Istvanavi. And we see Jude, his eyes glowing with psychic power, standing amidst a circle of terrified tech priests, his fate uncertain.
So what's the takeaway from all this? What are we supposed to learn from this deep dive into WH40K2.pdf?
I think it's a story about choices, about the decisions we make when faced with overwhelming adversity.
It's about finding unity and purpose in a galaxy consumed by war.
And it's about the potential for both good and evil that exists within us all.
Even in the grimdark universe of Warhammer 40K, there's still a glimmer of hope, a belief that even in the darkest of times, we can find a way to fight for a better future.
And that's a message that resonates even beyond the confines of 40K.
It does. So what do you think will happen to the Donaldus Triumphus? Will they survive the horrors of Istvan Vif and become a symbol of hope for the Imperium?
And what about Jude? Will he embrace his role as the harbinger of peace, or will he become something far more sinister?
These are questions we'll have to ponder for ourselves. The novella leaves us with more questions than answers, but that's part of what makes it so compelling.
It challenges us to think critically, to engage with the complexities of the 40K universe, and to come to our own conclusions.
And that's what a good deep dive is all about. It's not about giving you all the answers, but about sparking your curiosity and leaving you wanting to explore more.
To delve deeper into the rich tapestry of the Warhammer 40K universe.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into WH40K 2.pdf. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the 41st millennium.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
And may the Emperor protect.